يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا.
It is rather concerning, is it not, that more and more people are going the dispute route. And for the purposes of this program, where we are focused on a concept that you, your lovely wife, and Mualim have come up with, which is called the marriage box. And that's the focus this morning on the show. Really, the question is, why the issue around so many disputes in families, and particularly between husband and wife? Why are so many marriages in trouble?
I think that's the most concerning factor. I think the nucleus of our society is the family relationships, and I think that's been for quite a few years in serious trouble. I think the ideas and the concepts or the reasoning of why it's occurring, I think there's various theories. I think at the heart of it is that, for me, just having practice as a lawyer and as a mediator, I think the amount of work that people put into preserving their relationships have greatly reduced. And secondly, the opportunity to escape out of the relationship is seen more and more easier. So people don't think through the quality of their relationships, but before that even, they don't even think through why they get into a relationship.
Ibrahim, let me ask you this question. You often hear people say, and I'm sure you as the mediator would also say, that marriage or a relationship requires hard work. What is this hard work that we refer to?
You know, with all relationships, and we see it in all types of conflict, a contractual relationship, which is a business one, a family relationship, an employment relationship, before you get involved in the actual relationship, I think the hard work should start prior to that. And I think we often miss that opportunity. And I think when I talk about hard work, it's the amount of work you put in to secure your relationship in advance. And so it would possibly define whether that relationship is one that you'd want to enter into, and then the terms of that relationship, and then thereafter hopefully have a lot more maintenance of that relationship. So maintenance, I think we all know. I think we know what the ingredients are. It's not rocket science. But I think at the heart of any relationship or any arrangement between parties, you need an effective working relationship. You need there to be effective communication. And
I think that is key, isn't it?
It is absolutely key. And I think in most relationships where there are problems, there's been poor communication prior to the relationship or subsequent to the relationship being entered into.
All this just, you're kind of missing each other in the dark, so to speak.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
What then made you decide to come up with this concept called the marriage box? What exactly is it all about? And you obviously have two partners as well, your lovely wife Adila, and you have Mualim Akhtar Ali as well.
Yes.
It was launched a couple of years ago, but it's been a bit slow going.
Yes.
And we need people to realize the brilliance of this concept, because I think it's brilliant. We've talked about this previously.
Yes.
And I think people who are embarking on a relationship, even if you're not in a marriage yet, should really invest in something like this. So tell us what's so magical about it.
Yeah, you know, the essence of this has come through from personal experience as well. I think we all realize throughout our relationships that if we hit a speed bump, we often struggle and we try and resolve it ourselves, or we go to a family member, or we go find an alim, or we hear about a counselor, and it's a hit and miss. And advising clients in my own personal life, having realized that, you know what, it takes a hell of a lot of time and effort and poor decisions before you get someone that you really can speak to. And I think that's the fundamental point. Often in relationships where you are going through difficulties, you do need a professional to try and help you. Okay, and that professional must be sourced in some way. So I think the concept itself was to try and have a very easy place that's professional, that you'd find professionals, but you'd find a multidisciplinary team of professionals that you could possibly access, and that we'd help you through that process. So if you, conceptually, is that if you're having difficulty in your relationship, you may need a mediator, you may need an alim who's trained as a counselor, because there may be issues around Sharia law, rights and obligations. You may need just a counselor, you may need a psychologist. So the idea was for us to conceptualize a business where we thought we would bring in all of these different fields, and you could call a number. That was conceptually what it was. And that you'd call a number and you'd hopefully be able to sit down with a professional, try and understand what your concerns are, try and understand what you need. So it helps you to make the right decisions in terms of a professional. And thereafter access a professional that we vetted and that you hopefully would have a good experience in terms of assisting you to resolve whatever issue you have.
Because undoubtedly when you need or seek legal advice, doesn't matter what your issue is, it's very intimidating.
Yeah.
People don't like putting their heart and souls out on the table, number two. And number three, they're not sure if this is the right person. And also they're afraid that I may go there because I have this problem that needs resolving. But what happens if it ends up in a divorce? Or they push me to the point where they say that, and I know it's, ultimately it would be my choice, but they kind of feel they go to a professional and then they are pushed into that direction, which possibly they don't want to go to.
You raised something very important. You've raised the point of people seeking advice from lawyers. And the second thing you've said is divorce. Because typically when we have challenges in our relationship, those are the two. We think of a lawyer as providing assistance to us, and we think of the possibility of a divorce.
Think of the moment lawyer pops into your head, you kind of relate it to divorce. If I'm going to a lawyer, it's going to equate into a divorce.
Absolutely, but you don't think of the other possibilities. So I'm a lawyer myself, and I respect the fact that there are lawyers out there, and you would need them at an appropriate time. And I think this word appropriate is important, because when you have challenges in a relationship, and this applies to society generally, and we see the amount of litigation and court cases that take place, the immediate response is to think, I've got a problem, it sounds legal, even if it is a family matter, let me go and see a lawyer. And then you suddenly realize, oh my goodness, the costs are so high. The lawyer would simply advise you based on the legal resources that you have. And those legal resources would be exactly that. Do you have a breakdown in your relationship? How are you going to get your money? And you're going to typically use a very adversarial method to achieve that. And when we look at it a bit differently. Law is one of the options, and going to court is an option. But it's an option amongst many options.
Will it be the last resort option?
I would think so. I think there's an obligation for us as Muslims as well to try and, in a marital situation, preserve the relationship. And fundamentally, our motivation is to ensure that there are a lot more relationships being preserved. So even if we do a lot more pro bono work, free work, to try and get people to start thinking through that and using less of the court processes, because you imagine, once you put down information in court papers about how bad your spouse is and how difficult that is, it may be difficult, but that is a public document, and your kids will always see that, of how you've spoken about their father or their mother. And so the consequences are quite disastrous. It in fact splits that relationship even further. And even if you are divorcing, I think what people often don't realize, but then start facing quite later on, is that when you divorce and you have kids, that relationship always continues.
Absolutely.
Because you remain the parents of the children. So it's fairly complex, and I think a marital relationship is fairly complex. And the other component that people often don't think about is that when they enter into this marital relationship, and when they're in that marital relationship, it is a contractual relationship. It has rights and obligations in terms of finances. There are risks for both parties. And we do so, and no fault of the heart, and it's a good thing that there's love and emotion in a relationship, and I think that's the key.
And we think that love conquers all, and you don't need a piece of paper, or you don't need a document or an agreement protecting each other's assets, and that is key. But let's look at that, and I hope that that is contained in the marriage box. Let's look at that after the ad break. I'm talking to Ibrahim Patelia. He's here to talk to us about the marriage box. Still to come on the show is Mu'alim Akhtar Ali. He's going to bring in the spiritual and the religious aspect to the marriage box. And to wrap up will be Adila Buerta, and she's going to talk to us about preparation for the wedding rather than the marriage. And I think that too is something we overlook. The focus is on all the wrong elements as far as a life partnership is concerned. Lines are open. Please call in and become a part of the conversation. First, an ad break. Welcome back, and we do apologize for those few technical hitches there, but we're back and we're on air right now. Thank you for joining us. We're talking to lawyer Ibrahim Patelia. We're talking about the marriage box, the importance of investing in the marriage box pre the wedding. Don't wait for a couple of months or years into the marriage when you realize you're hitting a stone wall or you're hitting a snag in your relationship, and now you're floundering around trying to get the marriage back on track. Let's find out what exactly is in this box. Ibrahim, back to you. And it's a pity you didn't bring the box along with you.
Yeah, it was a bit of a rush this morning.
Okay, tell us what's contained in this box and how important is it to invest in this box pre the wedding or pre the marriage?
Okay, I think essentially what the box entails is, we thought of it this way, is that all of this sounds very negative and unromantic. So if you consider it to be a gift, either to yourself as the couple getting married, or you want to give someone a gift, the product is packaged as a gift. And in there what you'd find is access to our services. Okay, so you invest in it up front, and it will give you a range of services that you potentially would require during the course of your marriage, but also prior to your marriage.
And let's assume I get that as a gift
Yes.
prior to my marriage. I'm 10 years into the marriage.
Yeah.
Do I still have access to your services if I hit a snag?
Yes, from the date of registration of the box. So the way it works is that if we would have approximately 6,000 to 7,000 Rand worth of services in this box, and we sell it for an amount of, call it 1,000 Rand, okay?
What is the actual cost?
The cost of the services that you'd find in there is about 6,000 to 7,000 Rand.
And the cost of the box, if I want to gift it to
1,000 Rand.
someone, how much?
1,000 Rand.
Only?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness me. All right, that's
and if you
very,
think of
very
it
affordable.
Yeah, and if you think of it in the context of a marriage that where you're preparing for the marriage and the wedding day and all of the hundreds of thousands of rands that you spend,
Absolutely.
this is probably the most fundamental. In there, you'd get a will. We'd sit down with you in a consult and draft a will out for you that's Sharia compliant. We'd consider all of the financial issues. Part of that is also a marital contract, which will define relationships, obligations in a marriage up front. You'd also get access to counseling services. You'd get access to...
Would there be a limit on the counseling services?
Yes, all of these would be the first consultation or the first counseling session, okay? So because there's so many different types of services, what you're basically doing is investing in a range of services. But we're quite flexible. I think if you hit in a snag and you're in a difficulty, we're happy to trade in one or two of your vouchers for a particular service. Because we understand we'd rather get you in and have a chance to assist you through the process. So if you are investing, you effectively invest in, let me just go through that, about 6 different types of services. You have a legal consult that you'd have access to at any point. You'd have access to a premarital counselor that's prior to marriage, but also you could use that at any point if you want to enrich your marriage, that there would be an opportunity to go through a process with a professionally trained person to enrich the marriage. Thirdly, you'd have a counseling voucher, and that counseling services is offered by a professional counselor. You'd have access to a mediation service, and that mediation service could be used in your marriage, or if there's a family snag, or if there's an issue pertaining to an estate, you could use that access to a mediator. And what I must emphasize, that all the professionals that we work with are accredited people. Even Mufti Akhtar, who you'll be speaking to later, aside from him being a Mufti, he is a trained counselor. So we're ensuring that the services that you get is of a professional level. Okay, and I think in any of those consults, what we offer as well as part of that is that we will freely do this. We will have a chat to you and define what you require, so that you're not wasting those vouchers or your money. If you would then need a counselor, it will be well thought through. We analyze what you'd require as a couple or individually, and we'd guide you through. Okay, and if we can't offer it, we're certainly going to advise you to go to the professionals that can help you. And I think that's the unique part of it. You investing in something that you'll always have with you throughout the course of your marriage, and maybe one day you have a bit of a snag, and inshallah you can then call upon professionals like us and access the services that you've invested in quite a while back. Okay, so assuming you would buy this for a couple, you would buy it from us. That couple would have a chance to register that product, and from the date of registering that particular product, they'd have 5 years in which to use. So it's not that it will expire within a month or two. Okay, we would have over a period of 5 years. At any point, you can utilize any of those services.
What about these days, as when, alhamdulillah, girls are going out educating themselves and becoming highly trained professionals in their particular fields? They're financially very, very independent. So they are obviously wanting to protect their rights, Allah forbid if something goes wrong. Yes. Or alternatively, you marry either a girl or a guy from a very rich family, and the parents or you yourself want to ensure that your assets are protected and not squandered. Oftentimes, when when a couple go into those nitty-gritties of the relationship, that's when all the troubles start, because the man might accuse the woman of saying, you don't trust me enough, I love you, but you're more worried about the monetary issues, and vice versa. And that's when things can break down very badly and families get involved. Absolutely. How do you protect the couples, and how do you navigate around those very sensitive issues? Do you have something in the box to help people around that?
Yes. I think when they say love is blind, it blinds you from what you need to do often. And I think love is fundamental. I must emphasize love and emotion. When Allah places that in your heart, and a couple sees in each other something that they would want to cherish for the rest of their lives, that is quite special. And we might sound that we're quite dry and unromantic about it, but I think when it comes to the nitty-gritty,
it's absolutely a reality.
When we see relationships at their worst, and you've mentioned this love, and I've mentioned this love, but the absolute other side of it, and it's absolute and it's pure, as much as love is pure, is the hate and disinterest and the resentment. So when we look at that, we think to ourselves, what can we do? And I think it's essential that when we look at what you're talking about is the financial and the estate planning, there is a guide in the box, and you could use one of the vouchers to access one of our professionals, and you could go through a process of planning. In divorces, as a mediator, I often see the weaknesses in people's financial planning. Alhamdulillah, we think that we are all a very materialistic society. We're also very affluent. But the reality is, when you start looking at the issues of money and finances and budgets when you're dealing with a divorce, I think 90% of the people that I deal with have poorly managed their finances.
And apart from poorly having managed their finances, at that point, all the ugliness in the relationship comes to the fore. Everybody has issues. They are so aggrieved with each other that nothing but grievances seem to come through. Absolutely. And you're trying to break down the opposite party to the best of your ability. And I think both parties are, trying to fight and to squeeze each other and to get the best out, or as much as they can get out of the deal, which is really very, very It's really very ugly situation, is it not?
Yeah. You know, and if you think about it from a psychological point of view, these two people now suddenly feel the amount of hatred that they have for each other, and they have things to throw and attack. And typically what they attack with is the more sensitive things, material possessions, money, and then at its worst, the children.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think when it comes to the material part, that's your property, how you've managed your finances, how your kids are going to get funded. You need to do the planning at the point that you purchase these assets or enter into liabilities. I think we need to talk about liabilities more than assets, because in fact most people come to me, even if they appear to be affluent with the right kind of assets, but they often have a hell of a lot of liabilities, and you've simply signed away a lot of your property rights, and you've bound yourself to a lot of liabilities. So I think what your point that you're making is fundamental. From the assets point of view and the financial planning on every purchase, I think it needs to be specified, and you need to think through very carefully with the right financial person, with a lawyer, to understand what's the contractual.
And all of this is contained in the marriage box.
Well, you'll have access to financial planning and estate planning. I think that's quite important. Because from a Sharia point of view, I think the idea is that we cannot assume ownership of something that doesn't belong to us. So what that tells us, that on every item that is in our homes, we should know who does it belong to.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for. We're going to wrap up, but of course, your colleague, Mualim Akhtar Ali, will be joining us. And after that, your lovely wife, Adila Buerta, will be in studio talking about counselling. That was Ibrahim Patelia. He's a lawyer talking to us about the marriage box, something you need to think about, something you ought to invest in, inshallah, pre the marriage. And when Adila Buerta comes in, we're going to ask her to share the website address with us. I didn't do it with Ibrahim, but inshallah she will share the website, so you can go onto the website and see exactly what it is we're talking about. After the ad break, Maulana Akhtar will be coming in, and he's going to bring in the spiritual or the Islamic aspect to the issue around the marriage box. Do stay with us. And on this part of the interview, we're going to talk about Mawadda and Rahman in a marriage or in a relationship. And the second person that has conceptualized the marriage box is Mualim Akhtar Ali, no relation to me. But anyway, he's here in the studio talking about a very important concept as far as the marriage concept, the marriage box is concerned, and also relationships and marriage. Assalamu alaikum, welcome.
Wa alaikum salam, Auntie Julie. Jazakallah for having me on the show.
My pleasure entirely. A very important issue that we're unpacking today, and that is, of course, the marriage box and relationships in general. Now, I know that you're a teacher at the Apex School in Auckland Park, but there's so much more to you. There's so much other activities that you're involved in. Apart from the marriage box, you also do private counselling.
Yes.
But for the purposes of today's show, we're going to focus on the marriage box and Mawadda and of course, Rahman.
Yes.
Talk about this concept, and also what and how does people get the benefit of it if they purchase the marriage box?
Of course. Firstly, I would like to express my thanks to Mediate Works and Marriage Works. I'm very thankful to Ibrahim and our colleagues. And when we came up with this idea, Ibrahim, as he introduced himself, is a professional mediator and a lawyer. He's been dealing with marital cases for many years now. And I happened to get to know Ibrahim when I started teaching Islamic studies at the Auckland Park Academy of Excellence. And on a monthly basis, we started teaching classes for parents. And then I became friends with Ibrahim. We got to know each other. And then he came up to me and he told me, listen, this is what we are facing in the field, in the legal field. Many times we have cases, but it's very basic things which stems out of misunderstanding between couples. And so I started working with Ibrahim. Then I went for training myself. I became a marital counselor. And alhamdulillah, for the past 2 years, I've been practicing this as well. And I see couples prior to the marriage, which we call prepare. And during the marriage, we call it enrich. It's about enriching the marriage. So basically, this theme that you have there, the journey towards Mawadda and Rahma, is about understanding the value of marriage, how it can enrich our individual life and collectively, because fact of the matter is that marriage is one of the major and most beautiful cornerstone of society. So it's about bringing this understanding what's in for me, self-awareness before I enter the relationship, and there's a few guidelines in this concept, and it's one of the classes actually which I do with couples who want to get married, and understanding why are we going in there and how do we empower ourselves for this very beautiful relationship.
Now, premarital counseling has never been big in the Muslim community. It happens in other communities. Yes. What are we doing as a community to push it, number one? And number two, if you invest in a marriage box, is there a voucher that's going to take the couple through a pre-counseling session? Tell us about that session.
Yes, there is a voucher in there, and what it involves is where the couples will come and they will have a one-on-one, we'll have a discussion. They have certain questions, of course.
And how long does the discussion last?
It depends. Usually we have a one session which may last for an hour and a half. But from there, then we take the cue from there and we work on it, we progress on it. Sometimes couple will have maybe 4 or 5 sessions. Many times they come with the parents as well. And we meet with the parents because they play a very important role as in-laws in the relationship. And whatever challenges they may have, or uncertainties rather, uncertainties that they have regarding the relationship that they're looking forward to and they want to invest in. I mean, earlier when I was listening to Ibrahim, he mentioned this, that the professional cost of the expertise which is being provided there is about 6,000-7,000 rand. But I think it's much more than this. It's a lifetime of happiness that we're investing in. And we are just here to provide the assistance. And earlier, you mentioned that, it's not big in the Muslim communities. But actually, you may have realized by now from my accent that actually I don't have a South African accent.
No, I know you come from Mauritius.
Yes,
you were born and bred in Mauritius.
Yes, I grew up there as well. But a very important role which existed was that relationship that existed within the community and the local leaders of the community. So I remember that when my sister was getting married, but my parents and my sister were there at the mosque, at the masjid, and they met with the local imam, and whatever question they had that was available. It wasn't just for teaching madrasa and other roles that the scholar of the community played, but it was much more than this. That person was actually part and parcel of our lives and our family and the development of our family. And alhamdulillah, in South Africa as well, at this current time, there are many scholars who are playing this role. But the marriage box is a collection of professionals who are bringing it together, which involves scholars of Islam, which involves counselors, legal background as well. So it's bringing this whole package together for those who may not have been exposed to the ideal of going to their local imam, their local maulana, where they can seek the advices that they need and implement those advices as well. Not just going just for the 5 minutes where the nikah is performed.
Typically, if a couple comes to you, they invest in the marriage box and they want to come for a couple of pre-marital counseling sessions. What are the questions they should be asking?
They will ask, for example, why am I getting into this relationship? What's in it for me? Self-awareness. What are my roles? What are my responsibilities? Many times they have questions surrounding how do we work out our finance life, because if both
That's
couples,
very important,
yes,
isn't it?
Financial perspective of the marriage, where both the couples are working, the husband and the wife are working. So how do we go about this? How do we create a balance? What about our personal time? Understanding the love languages, identifying who your partner is, getting to know who they are, and being open and creating a relationship of trust. And this is where this whole concept of mawadda comes in. Allah Ta'ala states in the Quran, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. And it's a very, very beautiful verse, amazing. That from amongst the signs of our Creator, that He has blessed us a spouse. So from the very inception, marriage is a gift. It's a bounty. It's a gift from Allah Ta'ala that He's given us. And Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala goes further and says, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا. So you can find, I will use the word sukoon at the moment. And the reason I'm using the word sukoon, usually it's translated as happiness.
Or peace.
Or peace and contentment. But before I was about to get married, 8 years ago, and alhamdulillah, 8 years in my marriage and happily married, And I'm very, very grateful for the spouse. I know she's listening right now. So I'm very grateful.
Otherwise, you're going to be in trouble if you say the wrong thing. Let's hold that thought.
Sure.
Let's take an ad break. We'll come back right after. We're talking to Maulana Akhtar Ali. He's talking about the concept of muwadda and rahman in a marriage, all part of the marriage box, which Ibrahim Patelia alluded to earlier on. And of course, afterwards, we're going to be talking to Adila Buerta. She'll be talking about marriage and the wedding, or rather the wedding and the marriage. So all of that and more coming up. Do keep us company. Lines are open, but first a short ad break, inshallah. Welcome back. And on this part of the marriage box, we're talking about mawadda and rahma. And of course, it is Muallim Akhtar Ali that is keeping us company. Do call in, lines are open. Just before the ad break, we were talking about the concept of rahma and mawadda. Would you like to carry on expanding?
And I was saying that when I was about to get married, and one of a very senior member of my family, who happens to be a scholar of Islam as well, told me something very interesting. And he said, you know, that you studying the Quran and you studying Tajweed, etc. And you will come across this word, which is called a sukoon. And Allah Ta'ala is speaking about litaskunu ilayha, and as I mentioned, usually translated as peace and happiness, etc. And he explained to me, and he said that, remember, sukoon also can mean stability. And when there's stability, you find contentment. So the aim when you're about to enter your marriage, when you're about to enter into a relationship, and you're going into this new journey that you're about to embark on, look for that stability. But you also must be the person that try to provide that stability. Because many times, I do a lot of counseling, teenage counseling as well, university kids, high school students and children. And they ask me these kind of questions that sadly, and they have this concern that we are, unfortunately, in a time where relationships are being portrayed in different colors. And it's all about that gooey, that romance and all of that, which is an important and integral part. But is it the stepping stone of a relationship? Is it just the physical appearance or the status quo that a person has in society, followership, etc., that what defines a relationship? I don't think so. It's about me being able to understand why I'm going into it. I'm looking for stability, and from that stability, I will get happiness, contentment, tranquility. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on further, and the word you mentioned, mawadda, that mawadda usually translated as love. But actually, mawadda is an outcome. That love is an outcome of what? I think the key word is respect. That if I can respect my spouse, if I can trust my spouse, I can appreciate my spouse for who she is, and I can respect all those values that she brings into my life, into my family, and I appreciate who she is, then the love will come about. So when there's mawadda, when there's respect, we will achieve that mawadda and that love.
And obviously the other important aspect is rahmah.
Yes.
Mercy, kindness, dignity, all of that, and also bringing the in-laws into the equation, whether it's pre or post counseling. Let's talk about that. How do we inculcate that beautiful concept in a relationship?
Of mercy. Mm-hmm. Just as mawadda is an outcome of respect.
And this is what you actually counsel them on.
It's one of the themes that we discuss. There's another one that we discuss called the libas model. Allah Ta'ala stated in the Quran, "Hunna libasul lakum wa antum libasul lahum," that you are a garment to your spouse. Now, what are the attributes to be found in a garment?
It's a protection.
There's protection. There's comfort. A garment makes me comfortable.
Absolutely.
And without my garment, I'm very uncomfortable. That's why you will never see a person exposing himself or herself out of haya and modesty. A garment beautifies me. So my spouse beautifies my character. And if each individual goes into this relationship understanding this instead of just expecting that, I need to understand it, I need to commit it. And the interesting concept in marriage, especially Islamic marriage, is our first and primary witness in the house of Allah Ta'ala. When as a groom, I'm making a commitment, my first and primary witness is Allah Ta'ala. And that commitment is everlasting. So as long as I remember, I keep in mind that in the name of Allah Ta'ala, I'm taking someone as my spouse, and I maintain the commitment that goes around with and implement this other concept, inshallah it becomes a beautiful relationship and a beautiful journey of romance and bliss and happiness.
Alhamdulillah. But there are also issues that are going to play out, whether you do pre-counseling
Yes.
with this premarital counseling with this couple, there are going to be issues that they're going to be encountering once they're in the marriage. There's going to be issues with interfering in-laws or what you perceive as being interfering in-laws. How do you broach that issue with the couple?
Within the counseling program that I do encourage in-laws also to come. And the purpose of them coming for a session is not just to tell them who they are, but also to remind them the important role that they are playing. When my son gets married, I'm not just getting a daughter-in-law, I'm getting a daughter. And or when I'm getting married, I'm not just getting a father-in-law, I'm actually getting a father. And that's a very beautiful relationship. So the same respect, the same commitment, I need to apply to it. Of course, usually when in-laws do communicate with their daughter-in-laws or son-in-laws, intent is quite good. But how do we go about it? How do we speak about it? How do we approach challenges that we may face, as you mentioned? How do we go about it? So the session that I do with them is understanding that every individual, of course, having a new daughter-in-law, having a new son-in-law, maybe we don't know them yet. And before asking them to, among the 7 habits, one of the things that Stephen Covey speaks about is seek to understand before demanding to be understood.
True.
How do we create this relationship of understanding one another and showing that person that I'm here for your well-being. I'm not here just to impose on you. So when this comes about, and it also comes down to mercy, that mercy, even though it is primarily between the spouses, between the husband and wife, but it is a concept that we can implement in every facet of our life. And mercy usually is an outcome, just as mawadda, love, is an outcome of respect. Likewise, mercy is an outcome of responsibility. When I see that I have a responsibility, I have a commitment to the next individual, when this comes about and I really understand what it takes, because then it will involve integrity, trust, communication, positive communication, automatically that concept of mercy will overtake my life. And when mawadda and mercy overtakes a person's life, inshallah, happiness is at the end.
This is not only applicable in a married couple's life, it's for all Muslims, alhamdulillah, for all humankind. Yes. If you can follow these two concepts, shukr, you'll have a pretty easygoing life. Now, you share all of this amazing information with the couple before they get married. What happens after they're married and they hit a bump in the road and they come to you and they're wanting now to talk about separation or even divorce? A lot of people kind of advise them and say to them, think of the children. How can you even think of breaking up this marriage? You've got children to think about. How do you broach that issue? And should you be putting the children as the top priority in this marriage, whether it's going to be broke, whether they decide to separate or whether they're going to continue in this marriage?
Of course. Couples that come after the marriage with challenges, the good thing that is that we already have a relationship of trust. And it's very confidential, usually what we discuss. And usually they steer the conversation, they steer the sessions as well. And one of the things which I do mention to them usually is, I can't make a decision for you. Because in counseling, to making a decision for you, I'll be imposing my opinion onto you. But what I do, or what usually counselors do, we provide certain scenarios, we provide guidelines based on which they can make the decision. Now, going back to the question that you have asked me about the children. Children play a very, very important role in a relationship. There's no doubt about this. But maintaining a relationship solely for the children while not developing a marriage, I think it's detrimental. I've seen this in my past experience.
Because the children are going to get hurt in the process. Yes. They're going to be growing up with very negative role models. A couple that are angry or aggrieved with each other all the time. There's no love, there's no mercy, there's no respect, there's no muwadda, there's no rahmah in the marriage. And the kids are exposed to all of that.
And as a school teacher, I will share this with you. And this is one thing I'm certain about. Children are very perceptive. They can read through the lines. They are the best investigators. They are actually the best therapists. They know everything what's going on. They just keep quiet many times about it, and many times they do talk about it as well. But if there's a toxic relationship where the spouses can't respect one another, where they can't trust one another, the children will grow up seeing this. So if you are staying in a relationship, and alhamdulillah, the children may become the common denominator that is promoting the couples to consider staying in the relationship, it doesn't stop there. You need to work on the relationship. You need to find what you found in one another at a certain time because of which you came together. So they are an important aspect of the marriage, but they're not the only aspect. At the end of the day, you started the marriage husband and wife.
Mm-hmm. So don't stick together just because of the children.
Develop
you
the
need
marriage.
to find the respect. You need to find the mawadda and the rahmah again, all over again in your marriage. So we've almost come to wrap up time on this part of the show. Underlying everything we've discussed, what is the important message you'd like to leave young couples and even old married couples with going forward in strengthening their relationships?
Your spouse, your husband and your wife. To the younger couples, I will say this: don't let your friends choose them for you. Why I'm saying this? Because I do deal with a lot of young people, and many times they will like someone, or they will consider a relationship based on what others are telling them. Is that who you are? Is this who you are? Do you be aware of who you are? And identify yourself with this person. Get the family involved. The whole concept of mashwara, shura. Take advice. Don't just jump into it for the infatuation which is there, because that doesn't stem from respect. No, you should know that, can I respect this person? Are there values in there which will create respect into me? And for the people who are newly married or who are in a relationship, my advice to them, remember, it's as simple as this, that your wife is your best friend. Your husband is your best friend. We haven't been forced into this relationship. We chose to be in this relationship. It is half of Iman. It is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is a bounty of Allah ta'ala. Allah ta'ala said that He's witness to this relationship. And it is so beautiful. When this relationship breaks, the happiest of all is the devil. Shaitan starts rejoicing. So this shows the importance and the magnanimity of marriage in a Muslim society. Hence, likewise in a friendship, if someone is my friend, I invest in that relationship on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. If I consider my wife, or wife considering the husband as a best friend, invest in that relationship. Develop your own love language. Communicate with one another and look for happiness.
Be kind and respectful.
Of course.
And loving, most of all. Thank you indeed for being with us on the show this morning. That was Muallim Akhtar Ali talking about the other concept as far as the marriage box is concerned. And do remember that premarital counselling is as important as marital counselling. So if you're hitting a snag in your relationship, please don't give up. Marriage is beautiful. It's a beautiful union that has been blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Invest in yourself, invest in your relationship, seek the help. Counselling does and can work and can save your marriage. Time for another ad break. And the third person in the trio of the marriage box is Adila Buerta. She is the wife of Ibrahim Patelia, the lawyer that was on the first part of the show. And we are here to talk about the marriage box. Please do call in if you have any questions or comments. And this time around, we're going to touch on another very, very important aspect as far as marriage and wedding preparations is concerned. So let's welcome Adila Buerta to the program. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for inviting us to the show today.
Lovely to have you here. It's just amazing the important aspects that's been unpacked thus far from the marriage box, starting with Ibrahim, your spouse, and of course with Muallim Akhtar Ali. You are a counsellor by profession, are you not?
Yes, I am. I've got a psychology background as well. And I've worked quite extensively in corporate environments. And that's just how we started this actually, because in the corporate environment, I worked a lot with team developments, individual development.
And a marriage is a team, is it not?
It is a team, exactly. And when we spoke about this, we said, that I said to Ibrahim, look, I've done a lot of team development and I've seen a lot of development in teams and how people can build their relationships in teams, and this is exactly what it is. So, and I've done a lot of self-awareness sessions for individuals, and we've dealt with individuals in terms of their self-development.
And I like what you say, self-awareness.
Yes.
In a marriage, in a team, in the workplace, in the home, wherever you are, as a team, if you don't have self-awareness, if you don't know who you are, what you're all about, you're going to be hitting a lot of snags in your relationship.
Yes. How do you relate to your spouse if you don't know who you are?
Exactly.
And any other relationship for that matter, because like you said, a marriage is a relationship, and once you know yourself, you can deal with other relationships in your life, like your line manager, for example, your children, your in-laws, which is a big issue in marriages.
Which is a line manager in this relationship,
exactly,
is it not?
Exactly.
Okay, let's leave that aside for now. We'll get back to it in a minute or two.
Right.
I think the important thing, and I like this, I like the way you guys have conceptualized the marriage box, where you come in and talk about preparation for the wedding day rather than the marriage. And sadly, we as a community do seem to have it back to front, have we not? There's months and months and months of preparation going into this fairy tale wedding, which also costs hundreds of thousands of rands. But I just wonder how much of preparation goes into the actual marriage. Talk to us about that.
All right, yes. So what we see is these beautiful weddings, which we love to attend because they're beautiful. Yes,
absolutely.
The food is amazing. The preparation goes on for months, like you said, and the festivities go on for a whole week sometimes. And what we're finding is that we have the wedding, then we have the walima the next day, and we can't leave anybody out because our families are so big. So this becomes a huge thing which costs hundreds of thousands of rands. But the couple don't actually know each other before the wedding. They don't know what the expectations of each other are.
Or even if they do know each other, they're in that honeymoon phase.
Yes.
So, you know, love conquers all. You're looking at each other with rose-tinted glasses.
Yes. And what we're finding also with the couple is that the honeymoon phase happens before the marriage.
Exactly.
Because they're dating. So once they get into the marriage and the reality hits or kicks in, they don't know how to deal with each other. They have these expectations of each other before the marriage, but they don't communicate it to each other. We have needs, we have goals, we have personality differences, and none of this is discussed before the marriage. In our minds, we feel that, well, we're going into this marriage, he's a wonderful guy or a good girl, they come from good families, so this is bound to work. And then when we get into the marriage, there's no preparation at all. So the couples then go to work, the respective spouses go to their respective works, they come, or employment areas, they come back home in the evening with a lot of baggage. And they don't know how to deal with each other or relate to each other.
There could also be lots of other family dynamics at play, issues around in-laws, or this might have been a marriage which the couple went into without the approval of their respective families, so they carried that baggage into the marriage as well. That's just another aspect that you bring into it. So when you are counseling the couple, what is it, and I know there's no silver bullet or magic bullet that's going to make things right, but what is your starting point with them?
All right, so for premarital counseling, I like to look at personality. And I use a psychological assessment for that, where we look at the different...
Like a psychometric almost?
A psychometric test, yes.
But Adela, please don't tell me that you've ever told a couple that you're not well suited to each other.
No, that is the fear of the couples actually, and the reason why they don't like to come for counseling, because the marriage has already been organized, or the wedding, sorry, has been organized. The designer has been paid for, the dress has been paid for, the venue has been paid for. Now, when we come to counseling and we realize that we have differences, we don't want to break the marriage up because
too much preparation has gone into it.
Exactly. But nobody says that the marriage should break. We look at giving the couple skills with which to deal with the issues once they arise in the marriage. So, for example, or what we find in research actually says that we are attracted to the opposite type.
True.
And opposites attract. So if I am introverted, for example, I would be attracted to an extroverted man because he looks more fun. He has the qualities that I don't have. And so this is what happens, that we are so taken by the opposite type, and that's what we build the relationship on before the marriage. Once we get into the marriage, down the line we realize this introversion extroversion type is not working.
What was I thinking?
Exactly. I want to go out and he wants to stay home, for example. But the couple then, in the premarital counseling, we talk about this.
So let's look at your psychometric test.
Yes.
Once you've got the results, what is it that you're sitting in discussing? Do you obviously share it with the couple?
Yes.
And what do you advise them with the results of this test?
Okay, so each of them takes this test individually. I get a combined report where we then look at we look at personality in terms of 4 poles, which is very simple to look at. So then we advise them based on the differences and the similarities. We could have problems. In different scenarios, there could be problems, like I said, with the extroversion, introversion, for example. And if both of them are extroverted, for example, there would also be problems because then all they want to do is party. That's an extreme extroverted.
So do you then advise them how to work around their differences or their similarities?
Yes. Then what we do is we bring up scenarios that could occur later on in the marriage, and then they need to come up with solutions on how they're going to deal with it. So effective communication, how they're going to communicate about their needs, their expectations.
And that's very important, because when you talk about communicating your needs, expectations and wants, often you just assume, I'm married to him for X amount of months or years, he should know what I'm thinking.
Exactly. He should know that I want flowers once a week. He doesn't know because we don't tell him what we want. So then the resentment builds up in one or both parties. And when they then talk to each other, they talk with resentment.
Or the silent treatment.
Or the silent treatment, which does happen. Or they talk from such a deep emotional point that what they say to each other is not even relevant in that situation. So what we do is we try to preempt those situations, and then we give them the skills to deal with it once it comes up in the marriage. So it's not a big snowball. It's a small little issue that we can actually talk about, maybe laugh about, and talk about the issue and not the person, and not the 100 years of baggage that we bring along.
And your mother and your sister and bring the entire family into the relationship.
Exactly. So that's what happens. And then we expect them to be able to communicate these issues, discuss them. For example, talk about the issue and say, I want to go out every Saturday. Then negotiate the issue. Well, we can't go out every Saturday night because there are nights that we need to stay in, for example. So let us then...
Or it's not affordable.
It's not affordable even. Or it's not Islamic, the kind of places that some of us want to go to. So let us then go out once, maybe twice a month instead of 4 times a month. And then the couple needs to negotiate and come to some sort of agreement on these things. This is a very trivial issue that I'm talking about. But these are the kind of things...
It may sound trivial, but these are the type of things that break up marriages, unfortunately.
Yes, yes. The trivial things. I've found that the smallest of issues actually become the biggest of issues in a marriage. And when you ask them what actually led to that, the couple can't remember what started this problem. So this is what the premarital counseling does. It helps the couple to sort out the little issues, to learn to communicate with each other. But then what also happens is in a marriage, we go through different stages. So the first bit of the marriage is difficult for some, and it's a honeymoon period for others. Then when the children come, there's a whole different dynamic that comes into that, and that's where couples also hit a speed bump. And then they come for post-marital counseling. But if they've already prepared themselves, then the journey is not that hard afterwards.
Okay, hold that thought. Let's go for our ad break.
Okay.
I'm talking to Adila Botha. She is the third person in the trio of the marriage box. We are talking about preparing for the wedding and not sufficiently for the marriage. Do stay with us. We still have approximately another 15 minutes to wrap up time. And we're into the final segment of the show this morning. And clearly, I truly believe that there just hasn't been enough time to discuss all of these issues in as much detail as we'd like to. But we're going to ask Adila now to give us their website address, because I'm more than certain a lot of you would want to consult with this trio that are involved in the marriage box. So Adila, please give us your website address.
Okay, the website is www.mediateworks.com.
How do you spell that?
It's Mediate, WORKS.
KS.
Yes, Mediate Works.
Right, so if people are wanting to consult, they can just go to the website and get lots of additional information on the website.
Yes, yeah.
All right, let's come back to the issue around counseling. A lot of the times when relationships, teams, marriages, whatever it is, when they hit a snag, it's about not understanding each other. It's about just assuming that the opposite party knows your needs and wants, and they are not providing what you require, and that's when a lot of the trouble starts. Give us a couple of examples and the do's and the don'ts around those issues.
All right, so yes, we all have expectations of a marriage. We all have goals, we have interests, and we have an idea of how we would like our marriage to be. All of us want a bed of roses.
And there's definitely no happily ever after. You've got to work at a marriage working.
You have to. A marriage is constant work. We go to work and we constantly work with our employment,
At our jobs.
At our jobs. But a marriage is the same thing. For example, when we start off with a career, we have 4 to 5 years of training, and then we write a board exam, some of us. In our careers, we do CPD points to keep up with continuous development, and if we don't, we won't be registered with our professional bodies anymore. And the same thing should happen with a marriage. We need to prepare for it. Nobody prepares us and tells us it's going to be hard. You need to give as much as you expect from that
Or
marriage.
possibly give more than you expect.
Give more than you expect. And we are surprised, because I feel that the more I give into the marriage, the more satisfaction I get out of it, the more happiness I get out of it, instead of just expecting the flowers every week and not getting them, and then being angry with my spouse, or in my head thinking that he is doing something to annoy me, when in fact he's just being himself. So the relationship, there's a lot of work in a relationship, and I usually say that to couples. What happens is I see couples that come to me, they've been married maybe for 8 years, and they're bored with each other. That's a very common thing that happens. Or the wife is jealous because the husband goes to work and he meets an array of people there. A lot of them are female, and she's sometimes at home and she doesn't see anybody, and she wonders what happens at work. And I usually say to the wife, why does he go to work? Because he needs to go and earn a salary. Why does he come home? Does he just come home to rest? Or does he want to come home to your company? Does he want to come home to what you have to offer? A couple needs to surprise each other now and then. They need to do special things for each other. And I always say it doesn't have to be surrounding money. We don't need to do things that cost a lot of money.
It doesn't have to be extravagant. It just has to be filled with love.
With love. Do special things for each other. Bring your wife a chocolate home today and hide it behind your back so that when she sees it, she's surprised. So the children don't see it. Well, you know she's going to share it with them later on. But just make each other feel special in little ways. And that will lead to a bigger respect, larger respect for each other, and more love in the relationship.
When you have problems in a marriage, you then start focusing a lot on the negative side. How do you advise a couple to turn that around, to start focusing on the positive stuff in the marriage? Also, if you're not able to express yourself properly, or you feel that you're being misunderstood all the time, how do you counsel the couple to get over that hurdle?
Okay, yeah, so what we do is we have to go back to the beginning. What caused them to marry each other? How did they feel in the beginning stages of the marriage? So they have to remember why they were attracted to each other. And then we start building on that. And we start looking at the positive sides as opposed to the negatives. We also ask the couples what they want from the marriage. What are their expectations? And they need to tell each other what those expectations are. What will make them happy? And the couple then, for example, if the wife says that the husband needs to respond, in can he actually make her happy in that way, or will he negotiate with her? So that will bring about some sort of positives. And then they need to start working on it on their own, because when you come for counseling, it's once a week. And can once a week really help you? You need to take back what you've learned in the counseling session, the skills, and they need to start practicing it at home. And that's really hard, because when we go home, we get put into our comfy zone, and then we start talking to each other in a very negative way again. So
because it's a habit. We've inculcated that habit from day one, and you know, it's hard to kind of overcome that habit. Is there ever a point where you have couples who just decide, nah, this is not going to work for us. We believe that it's best that we part company. What do you say to a couple like that?
Well, when a couple comes to counseling, they generally have some hope. So we try to build on the positives then. But if we see that they really need to part ways, then they must do it amicably. And if there are children in the marriage, then they need to deal with those children appropriately as well. Because the children see what's gone on in the marriage and they think this is normal. So if there was verbal or emotional abuse in the marriage, those children take it through their lives. And
unfortunately, that's the baggage they're going to carry.
It's the baggage. They take it into their own marriages. So we would like the children to have counseling as well, and they do it in a form of play therapy, because they can't verbalize what they're feeling, what they're thinking, or anything, or what the emotions are. So play therapy assists the children. And then with the couple, when they part, they need to do it amicably, they need to think about the children, and they need to then move on with their lives. I find that some couples, either the spouse, or the husband or the wife, is still stuck to the other party. So it's like a stalker kind of relationship. They can't let the husband go because she keeps looking at his Facebook profiles, at his Instagrams.
And sadly, they also use the children to kind of almost spy on each other.
That's what
so the children are taking, obviously, messages or information from dad to mom and vice versa, which is so, it's really stuff you're putting on that child, which is so unfair. You placing a very, very heavy burden on the child. And parents should remember not to use the children as a football from one parent to the other. In closing then, Adila, why would you say to our viewers this morning that it's important to invest in the marriage box?
Well, I think it's important because if you're going into a marriage, spend a little bit of money and time and effort to understand yourself, and then to understand who your spouse is, to communicate the needs in the relationship, the decision-making processes, the communication styles in the marriage, because that, compared to the wedding, is minimal. And then you will have an enriched marriage, a healthy marriage, and a wholesome marriage. And what we're trying to do is then reduce the divorce rate, which is exceptionally high in the Muslim community.
Unfortunately.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, give us the website address one more time.
All right, it's www.mediateworks.com.
Adila, it's been an absolute pleasure having you, Maulana, and obviously your dear husband Ibrahim. It's been wonderful. I think this concept is amazing. Yes. And I also understand that you guys are going to be at the Muslim Lifestyle Festival. Is that what it's called?
The marriage conference, or the...
the name has changed. It's now the Muslim Lifestyle Fest.
Yes.
It's at the Sandton Convention Centre on the 22nd of July. So you are going to be there out in full force promoting the marriage box.
Promoting the marriage box, yes.
Well, I think it's really an investment at 1,000 Rand. It's really nothing. It's not a big investment at all, and I think it's well worth the money. Invest in a marriage box for yourself and also as a gift to someone in your family, inshallah.
Definitely.
Wonderful having you on the show.
Thank you so much.
Keep up the great work, and salaam alaikum to you.
Walaikum salam.
And there you have it, the trio from the marriage box. Ibrahim Patelia was the lawyer that started the show. We also had Mualim Akhtar Ali talking about the spiritual aspect of a relationship, and Adila Buerta, the wife of Ibrahim, rounding up the issue on the marriage box. It's a mere 1,000 Rand, an investment well worth it, lovely to give as a gift, or also to your own children probably getting married, or perhaps you are the young couple invest the R1,000 in yourself, and I think you can afford it if you're going to be splurging hundreds of thousands of rands on that very, very fairy tale wedding of yours. Just set aside R1,000 for the marriage box. Till the next time, as always, have a great weekend. Assalamu alaikum and wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from me, Julie Alli.
يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا 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 هلا